How's everybody doing out there? Welcome to another segment of my Brian Speaks On series, web series. Um, this is going to be more. This will more than likely be a two-parter because of the various nature of that this subject contains, the variables and the different levels. But I want to focus on one level of the story right now, and then in the second video, I'll speak to the second aspect. Of course, right now the major story going on in America is the Sandra Bland mystery, as some people would like to define it. Mysterious circumstantial death. While incarcerated, supposedly by suicide, supposedly under the care of correctional facility. And there's so many different angles to even go in on this, and I usually try to come from a different perspective, from another angle that kind of, maybe not be the main topic of discussion. But one of the things that really irks me is that whenever we see this type of incident happen, we see a certain rhetoric, constantly happen, and the rhetoric is our rhetoric in speaking on things like this and showing our anger, showing our discontent, showing our intolerance of this. And we see the opposite spectrum rhetoric of people who may not feel that this is something that applies to them for whatever reason outside of our culture. They feel as if this type of rhetoric that they keep hearing from us is annoying to them and an inconvenience to their experience on social media. And of course, that in itself displays the very privilege that the majority of them will yell and scream that they don't possess, that they will go to their grave denying that they have. It basically shows their privilege right there in itself. The lack of empathy, the putting your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, social day as a higher priority than something of the magnitude that this really encapsulates. This may have been a single incident, but it encapsulates something way bigger. It encompasses something that is bigger than the specific incident itself. We go back to the police brutality thing, and these very same people who will sit there and be annoyed by certain headings and mantras being spoken right now are the very ones that don't support what they claim to be important. And what I mean by that is, like, you'll see black people, we'll have a situation like what just happened, and people will start saying Black Lives Matter, and not a lot of non-black people will sit there and go, well, all lives matter. So just because you don't like the heading that's been given something, you want to basically deflect and go into another area of that. Now, again, it also shows a certain privilege, because if all lives matter, then why wouldn't you be speaking about the black lives that matter? If all lives matter, are black lives not a part of that in your realm? So if all lives matter, then the black lives should matter as well. And if the black lives are the ones that are being taken out at such a higher ratio than you see other cultures and other lives, then why not just speak for the ones that are there? And also, if all lives do matter, why is it that you're not promoting other people who are being violated and their lives unfairly taken and unjustly, taken from this earth? Because you're expending your energy criticizing people saying Black Lives Matter by saying all lives matter. So what you're doing is you're dismissing and minimizing black lives, and at the same time not even promoting the all lives that you are campaigning for. Because you go to their walls, you go to their posts, they're not talking about non-black people who have been brutalized and killed at the hands of police brutality. And we know that it exists socially, but you don't see them talking about that. You just see them ranting about black people with our rhetoric. So it's really more about that than it is lives mattering. It's more about them being inconvenienced than it is about lives mattering. And then they always like to play this game that, you know, they try to mess with people's psyche, especially men. And I say that because whenever you see men speaking passionately about something with discontent, there is this notion for people to kind of pigeonhole them under this stereotype as them being sensitive in a bad way, sensitive in a feminine way. All y'all up in y'all feelings and this, and there's always that insinuation, and they try to make you feel bad for being upset about something that you should be upset about and you should speak up about, which is funny because you always tend to hear people complain about how today's men don't speak up and aren't stepping up and aren't being the leaders that we need. But when you see men stepping up and speaking out, you criticize them and you say that they're not manly, that they're being emotional and in their feelings. And then again, it's not just men, it's just black people and people who support, non-black people also who support this mantra. Also, there is this strong dissonance, which also is a reflection of the privilege that, once again, they steadfastly refuse that they have. There is a dissonance towards basic logic that they refuse to digest and accept. You see, and I'll stick to this specific case of Sandra Bland. Woman gets arrested for something that shouldn't have been more than just a summonsable violation, not an offense, not a broken law, a violation. And it goes from that to this woman being somehow dead. People are showing pictures, video, all types of things that basically point to a lot of logical conclusions. This whole thing about her hanging herself with a plastic bag and her having a trash can in her cell is ludicrous, because jail cells don't provide trash cans. Everything is bolted to the floor. They don't provide things like plastic bags because people tend to suffocate themselves with plastic bags, or try to hang themselves. So that's why things like that aren't normally in jail cells. Now again, there's a lot of stuff that gets put out there and people will justify and just not acknowledge, to the point of you have to ask them, all right, well, what is it that you're actually looking for? What proof are you actually looking for? And then again, it comes down to this privilege of this woman's tragic death is not valid to you until you somehow see some overwhelming red smoking gun, red herring evidence. Because as far as you're concerned, it's not valid. So if it's not valid to you, then it's not supposed to be valid. See, again, that again comes with a certain privilege. Now, had that woman been somebody, like say among your close personal friends, relatives, siblings, somebody that you actually have a personal connection to, methinks that your perspective would not be like that. I think your perspective would be much different. But again, one thing that I like to say is that perspective usually comes down to which side of the situation you fall under. And again, they would rather be dissonant in their bliss than to acknowledge what's being put out there that actually shows more logic. Like, you would actually want to believe that this woman somehow had a plastic bag and killed herself with a plastic bag in a jail cell. You know? And y'all love cherry picking. That's what I'm going to call y'all. Y'all are cherry pickers. People will give you a list of like 30 things that point to a certain conclusion, and you'll cherry pick one or two things out of the 30 and say, well, what about this though? Like, that's supposed to represent some type of some type of crack in the armor of the argument, of the facts. Not even an argument, facts. It's almost like, oh, well, we found this one thing that we feel is not valid enough. You need to validate it more to convince me. I don't have to convince you. We're not seeking your validation. That's another privilege that you don't seem to understand. Nobody's trying to prove something for your validation. We're putting it out there for you to see for yourself. If you choose not to accept the information, then be about your business. Go about your way. That's really what it comes down to. It has nothing to do with being in your feelings or being emotional, or being somehow sensitive. This has everything to do with injustice. This has everything to do with this being everybody's problem. It's everybody's problem. And one day it might be your problem. Individually, it might be your problem. You might be that woman that gets pulled over. You might be that woman that feels like you're being treated unfairly right now, and you want to practice your constitutional human right to voice your discontent. And you might be that woman that gets beat up, arrested, and mysteriously not make it home in a few days. And we may be talking about your situation one day and debating it. And people like you will be dismissing your story as, oh, well, it didn't show enough for me to be convinced that this was somehow weird and unlawful. So, we'll see how that goes. And, hey, I hope it doesn't happen. But, this whole apathetic attitude and this putting your head in your own ass attitude is not going to, alleviate these issues any faster. And criticizing those who are basically just showing the world what's going on out here, that's not helping either. So if you're not going to be a part of the solution, just log off. Go somewhere. Get a hobby. Exercise. Go jogging or something. And leave the activism to those who actually care. And if you don't care, then just don't even say nothing. Just disappear for a while. Later.